Yields. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Brecheen, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today. For years, United States citizens have been clamoring to find a solution for the border. And, it's not just about the fentanyl, which is the leading cause of death, we know, from 18 to 45-year-olds. It's absolutely heavily correlated to what's being allowed at that southern border, but it's also weapons and human trafficking. There's a movie, a little-known movie being out right now that you may have heard about called Sound of Freedom. And I think the American people know what a tragedy we have. President Trump's administration, they responded. They built physical barriers. It's been cited that there were many people, some on this committee, on the other side of the aisle that voted for the 2006 Secure Fence Act. President Biden voted for the Secure Fence Act. But yet, as president, he took office and said not another foot, shut down the $15 billion that was to be allocated as mandated by Congress, appropriated under the rule of law, and he, with the stroke of his pen, said not another foot. In the context of 2021, I'm in a construction business. I had a little small business. I found myself in Washington, D.C., and found myself outside of a physical barrier in the fall of 21. That physical barrier had been put in place by Speaker Pelosi, and quite a contrast that months before the president had said physical barriers, they don't work. Nancy Pelosi employed them. And so, Ms. Cooper, here's what I would ask you is, if physical barriers, as my Democrat colleague a minute ago said, are 30-year-old outdated systems, why did Nancy Pelosi employ them at the same time we're canceling contracts on the southern border around the Capitol building?
Respectfully, Congressman, I can't speak to the decision to employ barriers in that context.
Do you see a conflict? I mean, in terms of ideology, to say on one side, we don't think physical barriers work. 65 countries, to my colleague's point a minute ago, 1/3 of all countries in the United States have physical barriers on their borders. And there's this floating thought pattern out there. Physical barriers don't work. They're outdated. Do you see the hypocrisy when they're used to surround the Capitol building by Speaker Pelosi? At the same time, we're canceling contracts to stop the flow of drugs coming into our country?
Again, with respect, Congressman, I can't speak to that.
Let me pivot. $262 million, Mr. Jeffries, you cited, was the amount of total expense of the material out of the $15 billion that was laying dormant after President Biden said not another foot. $262 million, 20,000 panels. Someone that comes from the heavy equipment world, there's kind of few things you can do with big pieces of metal. I find it astounding that we don't know if there's some states that wanted those materials when the disposition process is to include either Fed or state entities first prior to scrap. It's astounding to me that between GAO and the Corps of Engineers that we don't know, especially with the Texas Lone Star program, they're spending $4 billion a year in Texas. They're putting rent-a-fence up. They're actually putting up physical barriers called rent-a-fence. Why are we not diving in with the state of Texas that has the largest mileage that is lacking physical barriers and asking these strong questions? Hey, we've got material, 20,000 panels. Instead of us looking at scrap, would you be interested in erecting physical barriers? Because they'll all tell you that they work. Is that not something that we need to become more insightful about?
Congressman, thank you for your question and your concern about the barrier material. Your numbers are correct. We have 20,000 panels in the storage facility process right now, but we have not received disposition instructions. As the head of contracting, as part of the design and construction agent, we're not part of that decision-making process, so I can't speak to who's having those conversations or where, but I can just speak to the amount of material we currently still have.
Well, I just look on in with this. I got 23 seconds. Senator Langford from my home state, United States Senator Langford, he has information that's come out. $6 million a day was wasted because of this situation of contracts and place that we're having to lease to put material, that number then.
Gentlemen, yield for a second.
Can I finish the thought? And then there was $3 million a day, then it became $130,000 every day, and now it's $160,000 a month. It's just a moving target. I mean, regardless, it's such waste, and I think the taxpayers are so disheartened by the waste. And I would yield for
Yields.
the extra 18 seconds that I've gone over.
Chair recognizes